From Elevate Digital, the Vocal Minority Report presents the Negro News Minute. Dateline, Puerto Rico. Bankruptcy for Puerto Rico looks imminent as a May 1st deadline looms for the restructuring of its $70 billion, yes, billion in debt. U.S. Congress last year passed the Puerto Rico rescue law dubbed PROMESA. It froze creditor lawsuits against the island so its federally appointed oversight board and creditors could negotiate out of court on the biggest debt restructuring in U.S. municipal history. The freeze expires on May 1st, however, and an extension by Congress is not going to happen, said a Republican aide to the House Committee on Natural Resources, which is in charge of territory matters. A July 2016 New York Times article provided some context for how they got here. For years, Puerto Rico borrowed money by issuing municipal bonds, using the funds to compensate for declining government revenue and prevent deep cuts in services and layoffs of public workers. It easily found investors for those bonds. But Puerto Rico can no longer afford what it owes. The island is reeling under more than $70 billion of debt, and officials there have warned about its inability to pay back investors while maintaining essential services for residents such as healthcare and schools. In June 2016, the Supreme Court rejected Puerto Rico's attempt to allow its utility companies to restructure their debt, leaving it to Congress to finalize a rescue plan for the island's fiscal woes. The day after the law was signed, the island's former governor, Alejandro Garcia Padilla, suspended nearly $2 billion of debt payments that Puerto Rico was supposed to make. It was not the first large payment Puerto Rico had missed in those recent months. The island skipped a $399 million debt payment due May 2nd of 2016. The defaults then continued to escalate. Mediated talks are set to begin Thursday, but without an agreement soon, analysts say that Puerto Rico will seek protection under a process similar to U.S. bankruptcy. The talks have grown further apart since now Governor Ricardo Rossello took office in January, with the insider saying their words are not followed up by their actions. With a 45% poverty rate and rampant immigration putting Puerto Rico's fate in the unpredictable hands of a judge, it could go really bad for the government, said Elias Sanchez, Governor Rossello's liaison to the board. Dateline, Orlando, Florida. Aramis Ayala, a Florida state attorney, has sued Florida Governor Rick Scott after she was removed from 23 murder cases for refusing to consider the death penalty. Ayala, who took office in January as state attorney for the 9th Judicial District in Central Florida, covering Orange and Osceola counties last month, said she would not seek the death penalty in murder cases. One of those cases is for the killing of an Orlando police officer. She cited last month that legal chaos in the death penalty system of Florida, which has the second largest death row population among U.S. states, was the reason for her decision. And what's being called an unprecedented move by her attorney, the state suit, as well as the one filed in U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Florida, Ayala claims that Scott, the governor, acted against the state constitution and not allowing her the discretion to decide how she wants to run the prosecutor's office.
Yeah. Now, Aramis Ayala did not really make her stance on the death penalty clear when she was running for office last year against Jeff Ashton, right?
Right. My colleague Alyssa Cherney, who reported on this race, asked her a few times what her thoughts on the death penalty were, whether she had a stance on it, especially after she got some money from George Soros, the philanthropist and activist who is quite well known for his stance against the death penalty. And Ayala always sort of didn't quite answer the question when she was asked how she feels about the death penalty. This is sort of a complicated issue because of recent Supreme Court rulings have essentially reopened sentencing phases for quite a few older cases that had already been decided but did not have unanimous jury votes. The jurors did not unanimously say this person should be sentenced to death.
Nothing in Florida law requires Ayala to seek the death penalty, and that's been noted in her suit. The federal suit also names as a defendant Brad King, state attorney for Florida's 5th Judicial Circuit, who was assigned by Governor Scott to prosecute the 23 murder cases, and has filed a notice to seek the death penalty for the man accused of killing the Orlando police officer. The federal suit also asked that King not take over the cases as he was not elected by the voters of the 9th Judicial Circuit, thus depriving them of their right to have a prosecutor they elected work all the cases in the district. Dateline, Moscow. One could say that the level of trust on a working level, especially on the military level, has not improved, but has rather deteriorated. Those were the words of Trump's apparent former idol, Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin also doubled down on Russia's support for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, repeating denials that Assad's government was to blame for the gas attack last week and adding a new theory that the attack may have been faked by Assad's enemies. There was also what's been called an unusually hostile reception to U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson as he sat down for talks with senior Russian officials, which I just thought happened everywhere he went. Dateline, Austin, Texas. A U.S. judge has found that a Texas law requiring voters to show identification before casting ballots was intended to discriminate against Black and Hispanic voters in her Monday ruling. U.S. District Judge Nelva Gonzalez-Ramos said in a 10-page decision that evidence establishes that a discriminatory purpose was at least one of the substantial or motivating factors behind passage of the measure and that the terms of the bill were unduly strict. After the Supreme Court declined to hear the case, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton Jr., side note, who is currently asking for a new judge in his securities fraud trial after the current judge moved the trial from Collin County, which is up near me, to Houston, he said that it was a common sense law to prevent voter fraud when commenting in January. I think it's ironic that a man on trial for securities fraud is commenting on common sense laws, but I digress. The ruling on voter fraud comes about a month after two federal judges ruled that Texas lawmakers drew up U.S. congressional districts to undermine the influence of Hispanic voters. The legislation had been in effect since 2011, despite the legal challenges and plaintiffs arguing that the law hits elderly and poor voters, including minorities, hardest because they are less likely to have identification. They contend the measure is used by Republicans to suppress voters who typically align with Democrats. Judge Ramos said the law had met criteria set by the U.S. Supreme Court to show intent that included its discriminatory impact, a pattern not explainable on other than racial grounds, Texas's history of discriminatory practices, and the law's unusually swift passage. Dateline, New York, New York. 3 black men and 1 woman win 2017 Pulitzer Prizes. According to journalisms.com, of the 7 arts and letters prizes, 3 went to African Americans: Colson Whitehead in fiction for The Underground Railroad, which gives a fictional account of the lives of 2 slaves caught up in a murder mystery as they navigate the Underground Railroad. Lynn Nottage in drama for Sweat, which the New York Daily News describes as a timely drama about blue-collar workers devastated by layoffs in a Pennsylvania factory town. She also won a Pulitzer in 2009. Tahimba Jess in poetry for Olayo. According to one review, Olayo is part fact, part fiction, sonnet, song, and narrative to examine the lives of mostly unrecorded African-American performers. Sounds interesting. Hisham Matar, who is of Libyan descent, won for biography or autobiography for The Returned Father's Sons and The Land in Between, about his father's fate under the regime of Muammar Gaddafi. What beautiful representation as a black playwright, poet, novelist, and critic are the recipient of the Pulitzer Prize, which is an award for achievements in newspaper, magazine, and online journalism, literature, and musical composition in the U.S. Hilton Alls, the theater critic of The New Yorker and a staff writer there since 1994, appeared to be the only African-American winner who was not part of her team. Alls won the prize for criticism for, quote, bold and original reviews that strove to put stage dramas within a real-world cultural context, particularly the shifting landscape of gender, sexuality, and race. Definitely sounds like a guest we need to get on the Vocal Minority Report. Heck, they all sound like they do. We just got some breaking news here at the end of the show. Very sad to report that comedian Charlie Murphy has died from leukemia on today, Wednesday, April 12th. He was 57 years old. For Elevate Digital, the Vocal Minority Report, this has been the Negro News Minute. All power to the people. Peace.